Kurtop here, and these are 100 uncomfortable historical facts that people prefer to keep quiet about. The forest swastika. Sometimes an idea can literally take root in the ground, in a forest among trees that have been growing for decades. In the 1990s, strange pine plantings were discovered in Germany for the first time. So in the fall, when the leaves on the neighboring trees fell, the treetops stayed green and formed a swastika. Such plantings were found in at least 4 places. The most famous one is near Uckermark in the north of the country. The trees were planted in the 1930s, 140 spruces in the shape of a perfect Nazi emblem. It's only visible from above. From the ground, it's just a forest. From a helicopter, it's a symbol of power through time. What impressed me wasn't the idea, but the method. This isn't graffiti or wall art. This is a long-term engineering project. Planting a forest so that in 60 years, someone from above would recognize whose land it is. After Germany reunified, these areas started being cut down. They were afraid that followers would go there, that it would become a place of power for those who believe that it's still not over. And, there's a certain irony in that. Everything they wanted to erase is sprouting up. Literally, the Nazis created symbols not for their contemporaries, but for their descendants, so that their cult would continue to live on even if nothing remained. No flag, no borders, only the forest. The terrifying secret of the Black Death. The study of an ancient Egyptian mummy has shed light on the early spread of the deadly bubonic plague in North Africa. The 3,290-year-old remains kept in the Egyptian Museum in Turin have amazed scientists. Traces of the bacterium Yersinia pestis were found in the bones and even in the contents of the intestines. It turned out that the disease had entered the region long before the Black Death epidemic that raged in Europe in the 14th century. Until now, the oldest mentions of the plague came from Asia. There's a 5,000-year-old find in Russia, as well as materials from Europe and Asia. But the mummy from Turin confirmed for the first time that the dangerous pathogen had also settled in ancient Egypt. Scientists recalled that fleas were found in the village of Amarna, where the builders of Tutankhamun's tomb worked. They are the main carriers of the infection. There's even a mention in the Ebers Papyrus, which is more than 3,500 years old, about a mysterious bubo filled with pus. This suggests that the plague could have spread from Nile rats to ship passengers, who eventually carried the disease throughout the Mediterranean. Thus, the Black Death became just a vivid chapter in the long history of the plague. And now it's clear that its sinister waves swept across the world much earlier than previously thought, and Africa played a much more significant role in this process. The Vatican's alien archives. Ufologist Steve Bassett claims that the Catholic Church is hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life in its archives and urges the Pope to reveal this information. In his opinion, the Church has known about contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations for a long time, but is deliberately hiding it. Bassett provides several pieces of evidence. Firstly, in medieval paintings, he noticed strange images that, in his opinion, indicate the influence of UFOs. Hares fighting with knights, or trumpeters using their bodies in unusual ways, in his opinion, hint at alien intervention. Secondly, in 2011, Vatican astronomer Guy Consolmagno jokingly said that the Church is ready to baptize aliens if any are found. Bassett took this as a hint at the existence of a secret Vatican program preparing for contact with extraterrestrial beings. The third piece of evidence the ufologist cites is a statement by former U.S. intelligence officer David Grush that in 1933, Italy discovered a UFO, and Pope Pius XII handed it over to the United States. Bassett urges the public to demand that the Vatican show these archives to the world. Artifacts in the grave. When I first saw this find, I had the feeling that someone had deliberately planted the artifacts. It looked so implausible. A World War II burial in Poland in the Tuchola forest. Everything seemed standard. Remains of German uniforms, equipment, a dog tag, but next to the body there were Mesolithic stone tools, Neolithic pottery, and Roman coins. They were real, verified, not fake. I spent a long time trying to understand the official explanation. There was only one version. They said it was just a coincidence. It just so happened that ancient tribes used to live in that place. and the soldier died right there. But yes, of course, just a coincidence. This place had attracted Nazi archaeological intelligence since the war began. Their obsession with ancient civilizations was more than interest. It was mania. Anan Urbas sent expeditions to Tibet, Iran, and Africa. But even in Europe, they were actively searching for proof of their theory that the Aryans were not just a people, but the heirs of an ancient world empire. And here, in this grave, there's an SS man and objects that are 2,000 years old. I can't shake the thought, what if this isn't a coincidence? What if he was part of some program, testing, moving artifacts, or even guarding them? The Nazis attached ritual significance to objects from the past. They believed that ancient artifacts were keys, not to history, but to power. Maybe this soldier didn't die by accident. Maybe he died because of what he was guarding. Ancient inscriptions of pharaohs in the Nile. Diver archaeologists at the bottom of the murky waters of the Nile in Egypt studied rock formations covered with algae. At first glance, the stones seemed unremarkable. However, upon closer inspection, scientists discovered several inscriptions related to ancient pharaohs. A joint team of Egyptian and French archaeologists decided to explore the ruins of the reservoir in Aswan. Under a layer of algae, they found several carved images that are at least 2,300 years old. The images ranged from drawings of ancient Egyptian pharaohs to hieroglyphs. In the photo, you can see several well-preserved carved figures. The shapes are blurred by water and are quite difficult to distinguish. One set of inscriptions looks like a row of mannequin heads above two objects resembling tombstones. These ancient inscriptions are still being studied. Archaeologists believe that these findings may help us better understand how ancient kings ruled in those distant times. The Curse of the Terracotta Army. The magnificent Terracotta Army is one of the most amazing archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. For a long time, it remained underground, hidden from human eyes. This incredible discovery was made by accident by farmers in the 1970s in the city of Xi'an in northwest China. While they were digging a well, their shovels struck fragments of ancient pottery. No one could have imagined that beneath their feet was an entire army of 8,000 clay warriors. However, behind the beauty and grandeur of this archaeological wonder lies a dark secret. Legends say that thousands of workers who built this army were buried alive, along with the statues, to keep the location of the tomb a secret. Over time, many of those who tried to explore this place, or even just touch the statues, faced misfortunes and troubles. This gave rise to rumors about the curse of the Terracotta Army. Among the local residents, there is a belief that the spirits of the ancient warriors guard their emperor and do not forgive any contact with their statues. All this makes the story of the Terracotta Army even more fascinating and mysterious, reminding us that sometimes the past can return and make itself known. And while millions of eyes gaze at the majestic statues of the warriors, somewhere deep inside, secret guardians continue to stand watch over the ancient mystery. Why did the Vikings need the Arctic? The Vikings undertook amazing sea expeditions in search of precious ivory, reaching the most remote northern regions. Studies of 31 ivory artifacts found in European museums show that they reached Greenland and the Arctic, interacting with local peoples such as the Inuit and their predecessors, the Tuniat. Almost half of these walrus ivory artifacts come from animals that lived in regions between northwestern Greenland and Arctic Canada. This indicates extensive trade driven by the high demand for ivory in medieval Europe. Archaeologist Peter Jordan from Lund University believes that these findings raise questions about how small Greenlandic communities could organize such large-scale expeditions. Greenlandic sailors likely waited for the ice to melt to open up a narrow 10-week window for hunting and trading. Although there is no direct evidence of contact between the Vikings and the indigenous peoples of North America yet, scientists consider it possible. Research shows that the Vikings were not only farmers and settlers, but also far-sighted traders and strategic seekers of resources. The high demand for ivory may have led to the over-exploitation of resources, which ultimately caused them to leave Greenland in the 14th century. Magic and occultism. Honestly, for a long time I thought all this talk about magic in the Third Reich was exaggerated. Just another myth to give evil some theatrical flair. But the deeper you dig into it, the more doubts remain. They really believed. And not only did they believe, but they built a state in which occultism was embedded into the very system. Himmler saw himself as a direct heir to ancient magicians. He personally oversaw the creation of the Black Order, the inner elite of the SS, where runes, rituals, astrology, and even sacrifices were not a game, but a part of the ideology. Ceremonies were held at Wewelsburg Castle. The Nazis reconstructed the mythology of the ancient Germanic peoples, combining it with Tibetan and Indian symbols. They needed to create an alternative spirituality, one that justifies destruction, one that knows no mercy. I was especially struck by how they worked with symbols, not just the swastika, but runes, sun signs, blood as a magical substance, and the ritual sword. They believed their killing served a purpose beyond just killing. Some documents found after the war directly indicate an interest in telepathy, prophecies, and the search for sacred artifacts. In the final months of the war in Berlin, they weren't seeking victory, but a way to disappear, to escape to where they believed everything was just beginning. It sounds crazy, but that was considered normal at the time. There's no one left to go. The Zoroastrian Tower of Silence on Malabar Hill, a sacred place for the Parsi community, is under threat due to the declining vulture population in the area. These birds play a key role in the ritual of Dakmenashini, exposing the bodies of the deceased so they can return to nature. However, the decline in scavenger numbers in Mumbai, which began in 2015, has put this ancient tradition at risk. The Tower of Silence, or Dakma, which is over 300 years old, is a circular structure symbolizing eternity in the Zoroastrian faith. It is located on a 22-hectare forest. The outer circle of the tower is for men, the middle for women, and the inner for children. Before placing the body in the Dhamma, relatives pray in special structures called bungli, and then the remains are carried to the Kandi by special attendants. According to Zoroastrian traditions, contact with a dead body is considered defilement, and vultures play an important role in ensuring cleanliness and maintaining the natural balance. But urbanization, changes in habitat, and environmental problems have led to a sharp decline in the number of these birds. The decomposition process of bodies has slowed down, which has created difficulties in performing the ritual. The Wolfsegg Artifact. In 1885, a worker named Ryle Beck discovered a mysterious artifact about 60 million years old. Known as the Wolfsegg iron, he found it in a block of brown coal at a foundry in Austria. This metallic object, embedded in coal, caused great surprise among the worker and his colleagues. They handed the find over to the local museum. In 1886, Professor of Geology Adolf Gerlt suggested that the artifact came from space. However, further research showed that the artifact does not contain nickel, chromium, or cobalt, which rules out a meteoritic origin. In 1973, an analysis conducted by Dr. Hubert Matliener showed that the artifact was made using the lost wax casting method, which suggests it was created artificially. The artifact is almost cubic in shape, measuring 67 by 47 millimeters and weighing 785 grams, made of solid steel. Its edges were sharp and straight, indicating its machine-made origin. Some experts believe it was a lantern, a fragment of a much larger tool. This discovery gave rise to the theory of the existence of an ancient advanced civilization on Earth millions of years ago. And although many thought it had disappeared, the artifact is still kept in the Heimathaus Museum in Vöcklabruck, but it is no longer on public display. Reichsgold. One of the sunken ships in the Austrian Lake Toplitzsee had been hiding its secret for decades. The depth, murky water, and dangerous currents made it a perfect hiding place. Rumors had been circulating for a long time. At the bottom, there were crates with gold, documents, and stolen works of art. But recently, there was a reason to take these rumors seriously again. Researchers discovered a sealed safe, according to various estimates, up to 4 tons of gold. At first, I thought it was just another legend, but then photos, footage, and documents surfaced, some from CIA archives. Their data confirmed the ship carried a special cargo that was never to fall into Allied hands. This is not just wealth, it's a backup plan, a resource for escape, for recovery, for continuing in the shadows. We're talking about the legacy of the Reich in technology, in ideas, in people. But every legacy also has a material part, heavy, valuable, dangerous. And the fact that it was hidden in lakes, in mines, in glaciers, speaks to the scale. These weren't just randomly hidden chests, this was a system. The mythical giant, the Kardevsky giant, a supposed petrified man 3 meters tall, was discovered in 1869 by workers digging a well in Cardiff, New York. The giant was actually a hoax, made from a block of gypsum. It was brought to a farm in Cardiff, where it was buried for a year before being discovered by the workers. The idea to create the giant belonged to George Hull, who wanted to prove the gullibility of the public and take advantage of people's religious belief in giant humans mentioned in the Bible. After the giant was found, it became the focus of massive public attention, and viewers paid for the opportunity to see it. A well-known person offered to buy the giant, but was refused. Then he created his own copy and claimed that his version was authentic, and the original was a fake. In 1870, both giants were recognized as fakes, but the Kardevsky giant went down in history as one of the greatest hoaxes of the 19th century. A treasure from the seafloor. Archaeologists discovered 2 sunken ships from the Ming Dynasty in the South China Sea, which had been lying on the bottom for almost 500 years. More than 900 unique artifacts were found on these ships, ranging from copper coins to exquisite porcelain. The Ming Dynasty is known for its artistic achievements and active trade. Chinese ships sailed to India and Europe, where blue and white porcelain was extremely popular. Some ships ended their journey at the bottom of the sea, leaving behind time capsules. In 2022, 2 merchant ships were found at a depth of almost 1.5 kilometers and about 1 kilometer apart from each other. In 2023, researchers began studying and collecting artifacts. Underwater vehicles were used to retrieve items, and cameras and lasers were used to create 3D maps. From the first ship, 890 items were recovered, including copper coins and porcelain. From the second, 38 artifacts such as deer antlers and ceramics. The ships may have departed from Jingdezhen, the center of porcelain export. The items found are vivid examples of Ming Dynasty art. The ships have become important witnesses to trade and cultural exchanges along the maritime Silk Road. A recipe from a tomb. Czech scientists have recreated Celtic beer based on research of pollen from an ancient Celtic burial site in Moravia. Beer has deep roots, with the earliest traces going back to the Middle East, where breweries appeared about 5,500 years ago. However, its full history still remains a mystery. In the 21st century, new horizons were opened in understanding ancient cultures, revealing the lives and traditions of pre-Celtic peoples. Modern analyses of pollen found at this site have revealed traces of millet and other grasses used by the Celts to make beer. Scientists suggest that some ingredients, such as clover, may have served as sweeteners for the drink, indicating complex taste preferences and technologies of ancient times. The beer created by Taboos has unique flavor qualities, different from modern beer varieties, highlighting the role of various herbs and spices in its production. The absence of hops is an interesting aspect of the beer's flavor profile, making it similar to medieval recipes. Beer, being one of humanity's oldest beverages, continues to connect people across cultures and centuries. Archaeologists made a unique discovery in the village of Osum, east of Odense, Denmark, a giant Viking burial. They discovered more than 50 well-preserved Viking skeletons, which is rare for such burials. In addition to the skeletons, 5 cremation burials were found, which further increases the value of the discovery. According to archaeologist Michael Bohr-Lundu, such discoveries open up new opportunities for studying the health, nutrition, and origins of people from that time. It may be possible to find out if they were related. The burial site, covering about 2,000 square meters, dates back to the 9th and 10th centuries before the reign of Gorm and Tyra. This is one of the largest Viking burial sites found on the island of Funen. Some graves indicate the high status of those buried. For example, the burial of a noblewoman who was buried in a wagon with items such as a necklace of glass beads, a key, and a knife with silver decoration. At her feet was a wooden chest, the contents of which remain a mystery. A bronze brooch and a piece of rock crystal, probably brought from Norway, were also found in the burials. These finds confirm that the Vikings had extensive trade.
Связи.
Factories under the monasteries. I found out about this site by chance. It is rarely mentioned in popular sources. A factory with the codename Bergkristall. It sounds beautiful, but in fact, it's an underground complex hidden beneath a monastery in the Austrian town of St. Gorgon. When researchers first entered there, the radiation level was much higher than normal. Rare isotopes were found in the soil. The walls are covered with a layer of lead. They were either making something or hiding something there. Officially, it was a Messerschmitt jet assembly factory. But the scale, depth of the shafts, and tight security suggest otherwise. Something was being tested, something they didn't want to show even to their allies. Researcher Andreas Sulz is one of the few who got access to the archives. He believes it was the German Manhattan Project, a nuclear program. Secret, desperate, until the very end. What scares me the most is not the fact itself, but how systematically they built it, under a monastery, in silence, when it was already clear the war was lost. They still believed they could turn it all around with a single move. Or maybe it wasn't about victory. Maybe it was an attempt to destroy something if they couldn't capture it. The last insurance policy. And that's what's truly frightening. Not that they had the technology, but that they were ready to use it even when everything was already over. Our world was created by artificial intelligence. Professor Melvin Vopson from Portsmouth University put forward the theory that we are living in a computer simulation, and there is evidence of this in the Bible. Vopson claims that the text of the Gospel of John supports this idea and hints that our reality was created by artificial intelligence. The Gospel begins with the words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Vopson believes that the Word is the code that controls the simulation. According to him, this code underlies everything that exists. In this concept, God is not a separate entity, but a part of the simulation, possibly an advanced AI. Another quote from the Gospel that Vopson refers to goes like this: "Everything came into being through him, and without him nothing could exist that has come into being." The scientist believes that this also supports his hypothesis that the world was created through the Word. The code, the act of creation, can be seen as a programming process that resulted in the creation of a simulated universe. The simulation theory can also explain how God was able to create the world in 6 days, as described in the Bible. If we imagine our world and ourselves as a product of artificial intelligence, then running the simulation can happen very quickly. Thus, Vopson believes that his theory does not contradict religious views, but on the contrary, gives them a modern explanation. Scientists also point to the physical limitations that exist in our reality as possible signs of a simulation. For example, the limitations on the speed of light and sound may be the result of a processor that controls the simulation. The laws of physics that govern the universe resemble complex algorithms, and elementary particles can be compared to pixels on a screen. Another piece of evidence, according to Vopson, is the symmetry present in nature, the patterns of snowflakes, butterflies, and other objects. He believes that this could be a way to save resources used in the simulation to create the world. The simulation theory is supported not only by Vopson, but also by other well-known figures. Elon Musk, for example, claims that the probability that we are living in base reality is extremely small, almost 1 chance in billions. He argues that our reality is most likely one of many simulations created by a more advanced civilization. Thus, the simulation theory offers a new perspective on the nature of the universe and humanity's place in it. Giant Jade Dragon. Chinese archaeologists have discovered the largest jade dragon of the Neolithic Hongshan culture. The artifact was found in the stone tomb at Yuanbaoshan, located in Aohan Banner, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness, and is a unique find with no analogs in this region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramic items. Among them were tripod cups and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the site belongs to the late Hongshan culture and was created more than 5,000 years ago.
Праздник, которого больше нет.
I always thought that the Nazis only rewrote history, but then I realized they rewrote everything, even Christmas. In the early 1930s, a systematic campaign began in Germany to cleanse holidays of their Christian and Jewish roots. Christmas, one of the most important family holidays in Europe, became a problem for the Third Reich. Christ, Mary, angels, the Star of Bethlehem, all of this did not fit into the ideology of Aryan supremacy. They needed to keep the form, but change the content. The baby disappears from the postcards. Jesus is replaced by the symbol of the sun. The Christmas tree becomes the tree of light, decorated not with balls and stars, but with SS runes, iron crosses, and solar symbols. Santa Claus turns into the ancient Germanic Odin, a bearded rider who brings not joy, but order. Even the carols are rewritten. The music stays, but the words are different. Silent Night is replaced by an anthem to the Third Reich. The Nazis didn't just change the details. They were reshaping collective memory so that children would grow up in a world where even a holiday was about purity, about the nation. This isn't just ideology anymore. It's a takeover of consciousness at the fairy tale level, where someone doesn't know anything yet, but already senses it. I looked at old German postcards, at greetings with runes, at Christmas trees with the SS emblem, and none of this is a parody or a fabrication. It was a real holiday, only without faith, without forgiveness, without meaning. A holiday that no longer exists and perhaps shouldn't exist. Over 100,000 years old. Researchers continue to uncover the mysteries of our evolution. Now, they've discovered unusual footprints that are 115,000 years old in the northern part of Saudi Arabia. The footprints, preserved in a former mud pit in the middle of the Nafud Desert, amaze scientists because they appeared in a place where such ancient human traces were not expected to be found. According to estimates, these prints belong to early representatives of Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals, which confirms the migration routes of human ancestors in changing climate conditions. Thanks to an amazing combination of factors, the absence of strong winds, and the peculiarities of the local climate, the structure of the footprints remained almost intact, allowing them to be accurately dated and to reconstruct the scene of a brief stop by ancient people at Lake Alatar during a dry period. This place seems to have served as a rest and watering point, rather than a permanent settlement, as indicated by the absence of traces of tools or hunting. Some scientists believe that these footprints fit into the general migration route, along which Homo sapiens moved from Africa to Europe. The new discoveries change our view of migration routes and vividly demonstrate how nature is able to carefully preserve the chronicle of life. The Führer's last teeth. When I read about Argentine bases and Hitler's escape, one question always lingered in my mind. Is there even a single direct piece of evidence that he really died in 1945? In April 2024, the FSB published a photo that answered this question. The picture shows a jawbone, and the remains are officially recognized as Hitler's remains. They are kept in a cigarette box, 9 teeth. Everything is authentic. French forensic medical expert Philippe Charlier compared this jawbone with X-rays from 1944. The match is absolute. Moreover, traces of cyanide were found on the metal of the dentures. This confirms the suicide theory. Poison, capsule, gunshot, everything matches the official sources. It's a strange feeling. For years, we sought conspiracies, theories, and escape legends. But the truth was simpler. No tunnels, doubles, or submarines. Just a jaw, a dusty archive, decades without publicity, as if no one wanted this subject to be put to rest once and for all. Maybe because reality isn't as spectacular as the myth. The Indian Titanic. The merchant steamship SS Tilawa was sunk on November 20th, 1942, by a Japanese submarine in the Indian Ocean, 1,200 kilometers from the Seychelles. There were 958 people on board the ship, including 732 passengers. The liner, which departed from Mumbai to Durban, was hit by 2 torpedoes and sank at a depth of more than 4,500 meters. Due to a shortage of lifeboats, 280 people died, while the rest were rescued by British Navy ships. SS Tilawa, nicknamed the Indian Titanic, was carrying a valuable cargo of 60 tons of silver intended for minting coins in the Union of South Africa. The value of the silver is estimated at $40 million, and the fate of this cargo remained unknown for almost 75 years. As a result of a deep-sea mission, the Argentum team successfully recovered almost 2,391 silver bars that had been stored in the hold. The valuable metal was found in the ship's opium compartment. However, ownership of the cargo was disputed, and the case reached the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. In 2023, the court ruled that the silver, worth $43 million, belongs to South Africa. To this day, 2 passengers from that ship are still alive, Elvin Johnny and Tej Prakash Mangat. Every year, they gather for a reunion in honor of the survivors. Hidden burial chamber. While cleaning a 3,900-year-old tomb in Egypt, archaeologists discovered a hidden burial chamber. The work was carried out in the ancient tomb of Jefai Hapi in Asyut. According to a statement from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, a group of Egyptian and German archaeologists found the hidden chamber when they followed a shaft down to a depth of about 15 meters. Inside the small rectangular chamber, archaeologists found 2 richly decorated wooden sarcophagi nested inside each other. They belonged to a woman named Edi, the only daughter of Jefai Hapi, an important nomarch of the Asyut province who lived around 1900 BC. During the reign of Pharaoh Senusret I, and the photographs show a well-preserved, colorful sarcophagus. However, the chamber was robbed in ancient times. The mummy was damaged, and the canopic jars were destroyed. Despite this, archaeologists found some parts of Edi's remains, the sarcophagus lid, and carved figurines. According to preliminary analysis, Edi died young, probably before the age of 40, and suffered from a congenital foot defect. The tomb of Jefai Hapi, carved into the rock, is considered the largest private burial of the Middle Kingdom. He disappeared 100 years ago. The remains of the mountaineer who went missing in 1924 were found on Everest. This is about Andrew Sandy Irvine, who, together with George Mallory, tried to conquer the summit. Irvine's family didn't know about his fate for a very long time, and the discovery brought them relief. The team filming a documentary for National Geographic came across a boot as the glacier ice melted. Experts suggested that it belonged to Irvine. His relatives had already lost hope that any trace of him would be found. For them, Uncle Sandy always remained the family hero, spoken of with awe. Irvine was only 22 years old, and it is believed that he had a camera with undeveloped film with him, which might have contained photographs from the summit. Now, Irvine's family has provided a DNA sample to confirm the identity of the remains found. On the sock found in the boot, there was a tag with his name, A.C. Irwin. Irvine and Mallory were last seen alive on June 8, 1924. Mallory's body was only discovered in 1999. 5 skeletons that shouldn't exist. In the spring of 2024, archaeologists in Poland made a strange discovery. Under the rubble of one of the buildings in the Wolf's Lair complex, the former residence of the Nazi leadership, human remains were found. 5 skeletons, 3 adults, a teenager, and an infant, all missing their feet and hands. No identification, no clothing, no explanations. This part of the complex belonged to Hermann Göring. It was here that he held closed meetings. There were no random people here, and there certainly couldn't have been any burials. The area was heavily guarded. Only a few people had access to these rooms. The identities of these people are still unknown. No dental prostheses, no papers, no military tags were found, only skeletons, strangely arranged, as if someone had deliberately staged the scene. The execution theory? But then who is the infant? The ritual theory? Archaeologists do not rule it out. In the final days of the Reich, something irrational was happening, almost religious. Hitler himself was convinced of the sacred role of this war. He saw the Third Reich struggle as more than politics. It was a revival of an ancient order. Why were these specific bodies found at the lair's center? Why weren't they taken away, buried, but simply left under the floor? And why, during the retreat, did the Nazis spend their efforts not on saving, but on destroying the bunkers, blowing up everything in sight, as if they were afraid not of the advancing Soviet army, but of future archaeologists. Maybe it's not about these bodies at all, but about what was hidden nearby, something that wasn't supposed to remain after them, something they kept as a secret. Ancient Egyptian bread, estimated to be 33,693,406 years old, was found in the tomb of an architect who served Pharaoh Amenhotep III. This bread is an amazing example of food preservation thanks to the advanced mummification technologies used by the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians mummified not only bodies but also food, which was believed to be used by the deceased in the afterlife. The process involved treating the food with salt, slow drying, wrapping, and coating it with resin to protect it from decay. The discovered loaves have traces of characteristic texture and shape, which confirms their origin and role in ritual ceremonies. Bread is both a symbolic and practical element of preparation for the afterlife, reflecting the Egyptians' deep belief that they would need everything they have in the world beyond.
В земной.
Ancient stone circles in Saudi Arabia. Archaeologists in Saudi Arabia have excavated 8 ancient stone circles that served as dwellings for people more than 7,000 years ago. About 345 such structures have been identified through aerial photography in the Herat Uwairid lava field near the city of Alula in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The stone circles have a diameter ranging from 4 to 8 meters and include at least one standing stone. During the excavations, archaeologists discovered numerous basalt stone tools. From just 5 circles, almost 225 kilograms of stone tools or their fragments were recovered. Bones of sheep, goats, and cows were also found. Among the finds were various seashells from the Red Sea, located about 120 kilometers to the west. The round shape of houses was a global phenomenon in early architecture, and rectangular houses appeared later, in the Neolithic period. The architecture of the stone circles in Saudi Arabia is similar to structures found in Jordan, which date to about 500 years earlier. The people who built these structures also raised sheep, goats, and cattle.
Einstein.
Einstein. Sometimes history speaks much more quietly than we are used to. No conspiracies, no symbols, no runes, just a letter, a couple of paragraphs written 10 years before it all began. In 1922, Albert Einstein wrote a letter to his sister. He says that the atmosphere in Germany is becoming heavier, that there is a sense of panic in the air, and that despite his scientific recognition, he feels that he no longer belongs here. He will leave and be saved, but thousands won't. Einstein's letter isn't a prophecy, just the honest perspective of someone who knew darkness doesn't come suddenly. It rises slowly from everyday words, from ideas, from symbols that at first seem abstract, but then become weapons. When I read this letter, it struck me because against the background of everything we've discussed, artifacts, rituals, myths, it sounds especially sober. Einstein wasn't talking about secret programs. He just knew what fear looked like. The Great Conservatory, Chatsworth. Long before the legendary Crystal Palace built by Joseph Paxton for the Great Exhibition of 1851, he honed his skills on the grounds of Chatsworth House in picturesque Derbyshire. There, a colossal great conservatory rose, a giant glass house where Paxton tested the innovative methods that he would later use in building London's main architectural sensation. Back in the 1830s, while working as the head gardener, Paxton reimagined the landscape of Chatsworth, creating a 16-hectare arboretum and cultivating exotic plants like pineapples. Modern greenhouses were just starting to gain popularity, while Chatsworth's old hothouses were already in disrepair. Paxton introduced a new roof design, angled toward the morning and evening sun, and an original metal frame that let in the maximum amount of daylight. This approach was quickly adopted by others. In 1836, he began constructing a grand greenhouse, 70 meters long, 38 meters wide, and nearly 20 meters high. Inside, even a pair of carriages could pass through, and a staircase hidden behind rocky outcrops led to a gallery that offered a view of the crowns of tropical palm trees. A warm climate was maintained by 8 coal boilers, connected by an underground maze of pipes and a railway that delivered fuel. Up to 300 tons of coal were needed for the winter. However, by the beginning of World War I, There was a catastrophic shortage of fuel. The heating was stopped, and all the plants died. The extremely expensive large greenhouse was soon demolished, but it was there that the technologies were developed which made the grand illumination of the Crystal Palace possible. An engineering marvel in Egypt. Once again, ancient Egypt continues to amaze modern researchers. This time, an astonishing tunnel was discovered beneath a temple in the ancient city of Osiris Magna, which experts are calling a geometric marvel. The tunnel was found at a depth of 13 meters. It is 1,305 meters long and about 2 meters high. It is carved into sandstone, and its design resembles the famous Tunnel of Eupalinos on the Greek island of Samos, which is considered an engineering marvel. The exact name of the tunnel is still unknown, but some of its sections are flooded with water. Archaeologist Martinez, who has been searching for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII since 2004, believes that the tunnel could lead to important discoveries. Osiris Magna was founded around 280 BC by Ptolemy II, one of Cleopatra's ancestors. Archaeologists believe that the temple was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, deities with whom Cleopatra was closely associated. The team also plans to explore the Mediterranean Sea, as a series of earthquakes between 320 and 1303 caused part of the temple to collapse into the water. Earlier in my videos, I talked about how tunnels connecting Lake Mariot to the Mediterranean Sea were discovered. Myths. If the Nazis were truly inventive in anything, it was in how they rewrote myths. Almost any ancient culture where echoes of power, ritual, or sacrifice could be found was turned into yet another Aryan source. And it didn't matter how historically accurate it was, as long as it sounded impressive. With the Vikings, things were simple. They were seen as symbols of pure masculinity, runes, swords, and grim heroism. Because of this, Himmler tried to make the SS a religious cult rather than just an army, with its own symbols, rituals, even places of power. The same Wewelsburg Castle was supposed to become something like a new Valhalla, a temple for the future caste of priest warriors. With the Aztecs, it's more complicated. The geography is too distant. But the Nazis were interested in the practice of sacrifices. They were attracted by the very idea, ritual death as an act of power and subjugation. In the records of the Ahnenerbe, parallels are mentioned between Germanic myths and mythologies from across America. Perhaps they weren't looking for connections, but for justification. They needed to prove that human life is a resource, that sacrifice can be sacred and controlled. And then there's Atlantis. There were no boundaries here at all. There were many theories, but they adopted one of them. Allegedly, the Atlanteans were actually the Proto-Aryans, a tall white race possessing technology and knowledge destroyed by a catastrophe. And the mission of the Reich was to reclaim what was lost, to rethink the fall, to build a new order from the old ruins. The Nazis not only believed these stories, they built them into a framework to justify their power. That's why this remains frightening today. For them, myths were not fairy tales, but blueprints. The most outstanding discovery of the year. During excavations near the German city of Retz, scientists came across a unique brooch dating back to the 7th century. This exquisite piece of jewelry, made of gilded silver and inlaid with red almandine garnets, is considered one of the most significant finds of 2024. According to archaeologist Detlef Janssen, the brooch may have belonged to members of the elite, since such items are most often found in wealthy burial complexes. The luxurious cloisonné enamel technique used to set the precious stones created intricate geometric patterns, reminiscent of intertwined snakes. The thinnest layer of gold at the base enhances the depth of the garnet's color, and the oval shape of the brooch gives it a special elegance. It is believed that the piece of jewelry dates back to the migration period in the 3rd to 6th centuries, when vast migrations fundamentally changed the political and cultural landscape. An observatory without a telescope. Before the invention of the telescope, astronomers used primitive instruments to observe the sky. One of the most outstanding astronomers was Tycho Brahe, a Danish scientist who achieved remarkably precise results thanks to instruments such as the astrolabe and the armillary sphere. His data on the positions of planets and stars were much more accurate than any previous observations. Tycho Brahe compiled the first star catalog, which included more than 1,000 stars, becoming an important reference for subsequent scientists. In 1572, he observed a supernova, which disproved the Aristotelian idea of the immutability of celestial objects. His collaboration with Johann Kepler led to the formulation of the 3 laws of planetary motion, which became the foundation for the work of Isaac Newton. In 1576, King Frederick II of Denmark gave Tycho the island of Hven, where he built an observatory. Uraniborg was the first observatory specifically built for astronomical observations. The observatory included living quarters, astronomical instruments, and an alchemical laboratory. Brahe's main motto engraved in the library read, "What a person is matters more than what they are considered to be." After the death of Frederick II, Tycho lost support and was forced to leave Hven in 1597. After his death, the observatory was destroyed by order of the new ruler, Christian IV. Nowadays, Uraniborg and the nearby Stjerneborg have been partially restored and are part of a museum dedicated to the life and legacy of Tycho Brahe. New Maya ruins. Archaeologists are discovering more and more ruins of the Maya civilization thanks to new technologies and satellites that help detect structures hidden under dense forests. As professor of archaeology at Texas Tech University, Brett Houck said at a NASA conference, "In the past 10 years, scientists have discovered more Maya sites than in the previous 150 years. The main tool that helps with this is LiDAR technology. LiDAR allows us to see through dense forest vegetation and reveals structures that were previously hidden. With this technology, archaeologists are discovering new ruins in the territories of modern Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. One such project is a study in the northeastern part of Belize, where a team of scientists is examining an area of 650 square kilometers. In just a few days, the scientists discovered 28 new large sites. The ancient technologies used by the Maya for water management and agriculture may prove useful even in our time. Tim Murda from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte noted that the Maya adapted to changing climate conditions by creating terrace systems and reservoirs to combat droughts. These ancient methods can serve as an important lesson in the context of modern climate change. Prototypes taken to the United States night. In the silence of the archive storage, I leaf through old documents. On the folder cover, it says Operation Paperclip. Inside are lists of German surnames with notes in English: Werner von Braun, Hubertus Struthold, Arthur Rudolph, Nazi engineers and doctors who did not face trial after the war. Instead of prison, they were given new offices and laboratories on the other side of the ocean. Shemantov, 1945. The war had just ended. American military secretly take hundreds of Third Reich specialists out of defeated Germany. This is how Operation Paperclip begins. The program that brought about 1,600 German scientists and engineers to the United States. The Americans carefully erased any mention of their Nazi past. Here is von Braun, a former SS officer who became a key engineer at NASA. Dr. Struthold, who took part in horrific experiments on prisoners, is now called the father of space medicine in the United States. Engineer Rudolph, the creator of the V-2 rocket who used the slave labor of concentration camp prisoners, now designed Saturn rockets for America. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Along with them, German aircraft designers, chemists, and dozens of other former Nazis also settled in the United States. The Americans took not only people, but also captured technologies, tons of secret blueprints, rocket parts, and experimental samples of new technology. Any knowledge that gave an advantage in the new war turned out to be more important than morality. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union was conducting a similar hunt. In the fall of 1946, Operation Osoaviakim was carried out. In a single night, more than 2,000 German engineers and their families were forcibly sent deep into the USSR. There, at secret facilities, former enemies worked side by side with Soviet designers. No one cares about their past convictions. Only the skills they gained while serving Hitler matter. A few years later, rockets created with the help of these German specialists would launch a Soviet satellite into orbit and send the first human into space. Many of the greatest breakthroughs of the Cold War, from ballistic missiles and jet aircraft to the flight of a human to the moon, grew out of this dark legacy of the Third Reich. The defeated Nazi genius was invisibly present in the achievements of the new superpowers. Nazi engineering did not disappear, it simply changed its flag. And along with it, part of the immoral ideology seeped through. The end justifies the means. Science serves power, even if there are crimes behind it. Officially, the world condemned Nazism at Nuremberg, but in reality the victors eagerly took advantage of the fruits of its labor. This is the dark side of victory that people preferred to keep silent about. Sometimes I wonder, did we really win? Or did we just take what they created and integrate it into our own world? If the technologies, methods, and even people of the Third Reich became part of our future, does that mean we truly rewrote it? Or did we just continue under a different flag? It existed. Until recently, scientists believed that the grand project of building the Assyrian capital, Dur-Sharrukin, Khorsabad, was left half-finished after the death of King Sargon II. However, new geophysical studies prove the opposite. The city was completed and was in active use. Archaeologists used the magnetometry method, which allowed them to discover the remains of an impressive 127-room villa, probable royal gardens and water gates, as well as other large structures. All these discoveries indicate that outside the main palace, Khorsabad was a thriving center, conceived by Sargon II himself in 713 BC as Sargon's fortress. The city did not fade into oblivion after his death. New evidence contradicts the long-held belief about an unfinished project and reveals the hidden life of the ancient capital. Work resumed in 2017 after the area was liberated from ISIS. Under the guidance of the French Archaeological Mission, specialists used a high-precision magnetometer that allows underground structures to be visualized without expensive excavations. It turned out that Khorsabad, contrary to long-standing doubts, served as a full-fledged capital of Assyria, and now modern discoveries reveal even more about the scale and wealth of the ancient empire. Twice as heavy as a whale, the prehistoric cow lived about 40 million years ago in the water. German paleontologists from the State Museum of Natural History in Stuttgart discovered its remains in southern Peru, where there was an ocean in prehistoric times. 13 vertebrae were found, each weighing about 100 kilograms, 4 1.5-meter ribs, and a giant femur. The excavation site was a shallow bay that divided the equatorial part of the continent in half. Scientists determined that the remains belonged to a creature that lived about 40 million years ago. The creature weighed approximately 340 tons. This makes it the heaviest animal that ever existed on Earth. Even the giant brontosaurs were lighter. After studying the find, scientists concluded that these huge creatures swam slowly, dived shallowly, and fed on what they found on the bottom: algae, mollusks, and small animals. In terms of lifestyle, they resembled sea cows, which were exterminated by humans in the 18th century. Externally, they most likely also resembled sea cows, although in reality they were ancient whales of the basilosaur lineage. Bronze artifacts in Turkey. In the ruins of the ancient castle of Ayanis, located in present-day Turkey, archaeologists discovered bronze shields and a helmet that are about 2,700 years old. These artifacts, found under a 20-meter layer of debris, were created during the time of the Zoroastrian kingdom and were probably used for ceremonial purposes to honor the god Kaldi, the protector in war. The castle of Ayanis was built as a fortress and royal residence during the reign of King Rusa II in the 7th century BC. However, it stood for only 20 to 25 years before it was destroyed by an earthquake. Recently discovered bronze shields and a helmet were found in the ceremonial hall of the castle. The helmet decorations and shield patterns confirm their use in religious rituals. Previously, other bronze items were found at this site, many of which were dedicated to Kaldi, the main god of the Zoroastrians, who was believed to protect them during battles. Despite minor damage, the artifacts are well preserved and restoration will help fully recover them. Ayanet's castle continues to be the richest source of Zoroastrian-era bronze artifacts in Turkey, and each discovery provides more information about the culture of this ancient kingdom. The hollow earth is the last door. If someone had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have just chuckled. Vikings, Antarctica, The underground world, Nazis who went inside the planet, all of this sounded like crazy science fiction. But the deeper I dive into documents, diaries, and declassified reports, the more I realize this isn't just nonsense. It was part of an ideological construct. According to one theory, the Nazis believed in the existence of a hollow Earth, a space inside the planet where an ancient civilization was preserved, a paradise, a Gartha, an inner world. Interpretations vary, but the essence is the same. It's supposedly a place of power that has escaped destruction in time. There are indeed mentions in the archives of expeditions to Antarctica, planes that disappeared without a trace, and pilots' stories about a mysterious glow that came not from the sky, but from beneath their feet. Some of these ideas may have originated in the Ahnenerbe, while others appeared later among those who were fleeing. It doesn't matter who created them. What matters is how these myths fit into the worldview, not as a fairy tale, but as a refuge. The image of a car on an ancient temple. The Sagaramadu temple, also known as Puradalim Jagaraga, is located in the north of Bali, 11 kilometers east of the city of Singaraja. The temple is located in the village of Jagaraga, which is known for the tragic event of 1849, when during the Dutch colonization, a mass ritual suicide of local residents took place here. The temple was originally built in the 12th century during the reign of King Raj Sri Adji Jagaraga, but was later destroyed during the Dutch invasion. The restoration of the temple began in 1865, and its current appearance has mostly remained unchanged since that time. The temple complex includes two temples, Puradalam, dedicated to Shiva, and Puraprajapat, dedicated to Durga, reflecting their mythological roles as spouses in Hinduism. The walls of the temple are decorated with carvings depicting leaves, flowers, nagas, serpent-like creatures, and human figures. Puradalim Sagaramadu, the serpent-like Madhu, is linked to death and destruction rituals and is dedicated to Shiva. In the central courtyard are the carved Paduraksa gates, adorned with the head of the mythical creature Boma, as well as pavilions for preparing offerings and conducting rituals. This temple is unique in that its walls depict scenes from the Western world, such as a plane falling into the sea, a ship attacked by a sea monster, and an old car. Such images appeared because Singaraja was the main seaport of Bali in the 19th and 20th centuries, through which contact with European civilization took place. Space. The more I studied late Nazi projects, the more often I had the feeling that at some point they stopped operating within this reality, as if they themselves no longer believed in victory on Earth, and began looking for a way out into another dimension. Quite literally, projects related to aviation increasingly resembled attempts to break away from conventional physics, disc-shaped craft, tests with electromagnetic fields, ideas of a gravity shield. Behind the engineering tests, there was another layer, an ideological one. They believed that humanity had lost contact with something greater, and that the Reich had to restore that connection. In 1945, strange terms began to appear in SS documents: solar intelligence, pure perception, signal interception. At first, I assumed these were more pseudoscientific ideas, but then I realized they involved people linked to the Ahnenerbe and Himmler himself, not just fringe individuals. They were looking for a way to establish telepathic contact with someone, or something they called higher forms of consciousness. Some say it wasn't about gods, but about extraterrestrial intelligence that had already contacted the Aryan race. Theories vary on this. Some believe it was about direct contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Others think it was an attempt to access the memory of the planet. But the fact is that in the last years of the war, the Reich spent resources not on frontline tasks or the defense of Berlin, but on experiments with consciousness, hypnosis, radio frequencies, and anomalous zones. And then rumors appeared that some of them didn't go to Argentina or Antarctica, but higher up. That it wasn't just ships being developed, but craft for going beyond Earth. I'm not convinced by such theories, but I can't completely dismiss them either. Because if you saw how many people after the war were searching not only for escaped officers, but also for bases in places where they couldn't possibly be, you would also start to wonder if maybe they really didn't plan to stay. A cemetery. 3,000 kilometers long, a cemetery. From 1840 to 1860, hundreds of thousands of settlers headed west along the so-called Oregon Trail. The route stretches about 3,200 kilometers from the banks of the Missouri to the Willamette Valley. They crossed endless prairies, arid steppes, and formidable mountain passes, often spending more than half a year on the road. The journey was full of hardships. Lack of food, thirst, disease, and unpredictable weather claimed many lives before they even reached their destination. Historically, this region, called Oregon Country, belonged to Great Britain. However, after acquiring Louisiana and successfully migrating to the new lands, America claimed it as its own. The first expeditions of Lewis and Clark and fur trader John Astor paved the way, but it was only in 1836 that the first wagons with settler families set out on the Western Trail. By 1843, about 1,000 migrants had already formed the famous wagon train of the Great Migration, proving that it was possible to overcome such a dangerous journey. However, the road could easily turn into a real nightmare. Swift rivers overturned wagons, cholera and typhoid fever mercilessly claimed lives, and careless handling of weapons led to tragedies. According to statistics, up to 10 graves were left on every mile of the trail. And now they say that the Oregon Trail is the longest cemetery in the world. Many of the monuments along it are nameless, since burials had to be done in haste, sometimes packing down the earth with wagon wheels so that predators wouldn't find the remains. Thus, legends and myths about the conquest of the Wild West are closely intertwined with the history of dramatic human destinies. The most mysterious people of Europe archaeologists have discovered an altar from the Roman era in a monastery on Mount Ariondi in northern Spain. It is dedicated to the mysterious deity Laraki. The find, dated to the 1st century AD, is important for studying the religious practices of the Vascones, one of the most mysterious peoples of Europe. This altar is one of 4 known temples, the altar of Laraka, but the only one found during excavations. The artifact was discovered at the bottom of a well in the Dunestebe Monastery. There is an inscription on the altar, Valeria Vitella, fulfilling her vow to Laraka, free and deserved. Mount Ariondi, inhabited since Roman times, is located in the valley of the Gulina River, not far from Pamplona. Its strategic location made this place important throughout history, as evidenced by the remains of Roman infrastructure and a later monastery dedicated to St. Stephen. Little is known about Laraka, and worship of this deity is evidenced by only 3 other altars. The new discovery expands the known geographical spread of the cult of Laraki. Argentina. When I first read about Odessa, it seemed to me like just a plot for a movie, an organization created specifically to smuggle Nazis out of Europe. But then I saw documents, maps, interviews, photographs that don't explain themselves but say more than official reports. After the war, hundreds of SS officers disappeared, not just went into hiding but vanished. And almost all the traces led to one place, South America, especially Argentina, a country where dictators openly sympathized with Hitler. And in the mountains, those who didn't want to be found were hiding. In 2017, a cache was found in the Argentine Andes, weapons from the Third Reich era, medals, maps with German inscriptions, all carefully hidden. Hidden not like museum exhibits, but like things that might be needed. Later CIA archives surfaced, recording conversations where German bases, a hidden settlement, and even Hitler were mentioned. I'm not a supporter of conspiracy theories, but when too many random discoveries form a chain, it's no longer a coincidence, it's a root. Some people really did leave, some continued their work, not on the front lines, but in the shadows. What is especially frightening is not that they might have survived, but that they could have lived for a long time and passed on not orders, but ideas. Personal sacrifice. During the excavations at Huacacao Viejo in northern Peru, archaeologists encountered a startling practice. Teenagers were sacrificed along with their high-ranking relatives. Genetic analysis of the remains, which are more than 1,500 years old, showed that the young man and woman were the son and niece of the Moche representative, Senora de Cao. Moreover, the girl's father turned out to be one of the noblewoman's brothers, who was also buried in the same tomb. Unlike the public ritual sacrifices typical for the Moche, here the victims were strangled as part of a closed ceremony in honor of the noblewoman. Scientists suggest that such a ritual could have helped strengthen power or family ties, but the exact motives remain a mystery. Artifacts found with the bodies indicate the high status of the deceased And strangulation may have been considered an honorable way to send her companion to the afterlife. For the Mochica, whose temple tombs often contain evidence of sacrifices, this is a rare case of sacrificial victims from the same family. A unique musical instrument. Lviv archaeologists discovered valuable finds near Vinnytsia, dating back to the Neolithic era. It turned out that people lived at this site about 5,500 years ago. Excavations were carried out at an ancient fortified settlement on Lasovkum Hill near the city of Vinnytsia. People of the funnel beaker culture lived here. To study the settlement, scientists carried out excavations covering a total area of 140 square meters. They discovered a clay pit, a place where clay was extracted for making pottery and building houses. Usually such clay pits were located on the outskirts of settlements, but here the pit was found in the center, which changes the traditional understanding of the layout. The pit was also used as a dump where archaeologists found many fragments of pottery, animal bones, and tools. Another interesting find is an egg-shaped clay device with 2 clay balls inside. The egg was considered a symbol of life in all cultures, and it could have been used for ritual purposes, to ward off evil spirits or to entertain children. In fact, this is a prototype of a musical instrument that produced sounds of a certain pitch. 6,000-year-old human DNA in the city of Wuxi, China. Archaeologists discovered the DNA of a person who lived here 6,000 years ago. These molecules were found in 2 tombs associated with the Mesozoic culture of the Middle Neolithic era. Until now, information about the inhabitants of this region was limited, but thanks to these new discoveries, it has become known that the first people settled in Wuxi at least 6,000 years ago. During the research that began in April 2022, more than 100 traces of ancient human activity were found, including 2 tombs with DNA. A mysterious substance in a coffin. In the northwest of China, in the Xinjiang region, archaeologists made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin, about 3,600 years old, where Bronze Age mummies were found, a mysterious substance was discovered on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists are sure that this is the oldest cheese in the world. Researchers extracted DNA from this substance and found out that it is kefir cheese made from cows' and goats' milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origin of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Xiaomei Fu from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, together with her colleagues, analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which made it possible to identify the ancient cheese. Research shows that kefir cheese was important for people of that time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs or as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, 2 types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk, the other from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. Because of this raises the question of kefir's geographical origin. It was previously believed that kefir originated in the Caucasus, but new data suggests the possibility of a second source in Xinjiang. These results show that kefir spread around the world in different ways, and its history is closely linked to the evolution of human culture. Technology. When people recall the technological developments of the Third Reich, they most often mention the V-1 and V-2 rockets. And indeed, these were the first ballistic missiles in history that struck cities and possibly set the direction for the entire future space program. But that's only what became public. That's what the world saw. At the same time, in closed facilities, work was underway on projects that still spark debates to this day. One of the most discussed projects is Honebu. These were developments of disc-shaped flying vehicles, shaped like flying saucers. According to descriptions, these were machines with a gravity engine, capable of vertical takeoff and reaching speeds unattainable by the aviation of that time. Schematics, labels, internal drawings, all of this exists. Perhaps these were just concepts, perhaps more. One of the key figures in this topic is Victor Schauberger, an Austrian engineer who worked with vortex flows. His idea was that energy could be obtained not by burning fuel, but by controlling the natural flows of water and air, the vortex, as a source of power. He believed that nature had already invented the perfect form of movement, and humans just needed to learn how to copy it. The Nazis knew this and apparently used it. The peculiarity of all these projects is that they didn't look like weapons for the front. They weren't created to turn the tide of the war. It was as if they were made for another purpose, not for victory, but for transition. This feeling is hard to explain, but it's there, as if someone expected that these machines would be needed not in 1945, but later. Of course, most of these developments never reach the testing stage, but their existence speaks to the scale of ambition, to the desire to go beyond those limits, not figuratively, but literally. In these drawings, diagrams, and ideas, there was a drive to find a way out when all other roads had already been blocked. The last refuge, the lonely woman. From 1835 to 1853 on San Nicolas Island, the most remote of the Channel Islands, a woman from the Nicoleño tribe lived in complete solitude. It was this story that inspired Scott Odell to write Island of the Blue Dolphins. When her people decided to evacuate because of the threat from otter hunters, the ship departed in haste, leaving the young woman alone. According to some accounts, she jumped into the water to save a boy. According to others, it was because of a strong storm. One way or another, she spent the next 18 years living in isolation, surviving on seals, roots, and shellfish. Fishermen often noticed a mysterious figure on the shore, but they were never able to catch her. Finally, trapper George Nadiver and his companions, seeing fresh tracks, found this brave island woman dressed in a skirt made of green cormorant feathers. The woman turned out to be friendly and cheerful, although she spoke a language that no one understood anymore. Her entire tribe had disappeared by that time, and attempts to communicate were limited to gestures and unique songs. She lived with Nadiver for 7 weeks, then fell ill with dysentery and died, having managed to convert to Christianity under the name Juana Maria. Artifacts found later, harpoons, hooks, and shell ornaments, testify to her way of life and craftsmanship. Today, San Nicolas Island serves as a military base, and the fate of the lone woman remains one of the most touching stories of survival and resilience. A sunken ship with lead ingots. About 2,000 years ago, a Roman ship with a valuable cargo, including massive lead ingots, sank in the Mediterranean Sea. The heaviest of them weighs 68 kilograms, which is about 205 Roman pounds, according to the University of Alicante. The markings on the ingot indicate that it belonged to a Roman emperor, possibly Nero. In addition, there were about 3,000 jars of fish sauce on board the ship. This sauce, known as garum, was popular in Roman cuisine and was widely used as a seasoning. The ship was about 32 meters long, and at the time it sank, it was probably traveling from Cadiz to Rome. The ship was not only carrying valuable metals, but also food products important for the Roman diet. The study of the sunken ship provides a unique opportunity to explore the shipbuilding technologies and trading methods of the ancient Romans. Recently, a mysterious hermit said to be 188 years old was found in one of the caves near Bengaluru. However, it turned out that the man known as Siarama Baba is actually no more than 109 years old, which is still quite impressive. A video showing 2 people helping the exhausted old man move around went viral online, sparking many comments and debates about his real age. Siarama Baba was born in Mumbai and attended school until the 7th or 8th grade. He is a devoted follower of the Hindu god Hanuman and has dedicated his entire life to spiritual practices. After meeting the saint, the elder left home and went to the Himalayas, where he devoted himself to penance and religious meditation. Siaram Baba renounced the comforts of civilization and lived in caves, wearing only a single cloth, spending all his days reading sacred texts. The Trail of the Amber Room. I had heard about the Amber Room since childhood. The most mysterious loss of World War II. Taken, hidden, vanished between the fronts. Dozens of theories exist. Remained. But last year, news appeared that made everyone reconsider everything. Polish historians announced that they had found a new lead. Archives, testimonies, old routes for moving valuables. And everything points to one thing. The Amber Room could have been transported deep into Polish territory. Maybe to one of the castles, into a tunnel, or a mine. It's not exactly known. But the fact is, a trail that was long considered dead has resurfaced. What caught my attention wasn't even that, but the reaction. It was as if someone really didn't want this topic to come up again. There were attempts to hush it up, dispute it, push it aside. And the more I think about it, the more clearly I understand. The Amber Room is not just a lost artifact, it's a marker. It's a signal that far more was lost in that war than we're used to thinking. And some things still haven't been found. The immortality of Greenland sharks. There's been an unexpected twist in the case of Greenland sharks, known for their longevity, which may provide a key to unraveling the mystery of longevity, not only for these fish, but for humans as well. These sharks, living in the cold waters of the Atlantic and Arctic seas, can live up to 500 years. One of the oldest sharks, which was born around 1624, is older than Peter the Great. Scientists from the University of Copenhagen determined its age using carbon dating. Although Greenland sharks are rarely encountered due to their habit of living at depths of several hundred meters, scientists are actively studying them to understand the secret of their longevity. Early studies have shown that slow metabolism plays a key role. The rate of living theory suggests that lifespan is directly related to the speed of metabolic processes in the body. However, recent data point to important habitats. Greenland sharks live in cold waters, where the temperature can drop to 1.8 degrees. Life in such conditions slows down all chemical and biological reactions in their bodies, which may explain their immortality. In addition, they live in the depths where there are almost no natural enemies except for humans. Professor Holly Shields from the University of Manchester believes that the isolated environment also contributes to their longevity. The metabolism of these sharks remains stable throughout their lives, which is unusual for most animals. Scientists have not found significant changes in the metabolic activity of their muscle tissue with age. Further research on shark tissues at the Arctic University of Norway should help to understand how climate change and pollution affect marine life in the long term. Artificial intelligence has found new geoglyphs. Archaeologists, with the help of artificial intelligence, have discovered 303 new geoglyphs near the Nazca Lines in Peru. These figures, depicting parrots, cats, monkeys, killer whales, and even decapitated heads, have almost doubled the number of known drawings at this mysterious archaeological site, which is about 2,000 years old. A team from Yamagata University in Japan, in collaboration with IBM Research, has found previously unknown geoglyphs that are significantly smaller in size than the giant geometric patterns created between 200 and 700 AD. These figures, dating back to 200 BC, provide new information about the transition from the Paraxes culture to the Nazca, who later created such famous drawings as the hummingbird, the monkey, and the whale. According to archaeologist Masato Sakai, the use of artificial intelligence has made it possible to speed up and improve the process of mapping the geoglyphs. Thanks to this approach, the team was able to find 303 new drawings in just 6 months, which is much faster than in the previous nearly 100 years, when 430 geoglyphs were discovered. Artificial intelligence helped to recognize small relief geoglyphs that are difficult to notice with the naked eye, as well as to analyze huge amounts of data collected by drones to identify potential sites for new discoveries. Drones and artificial intelligence are a quantum leap in the study of geoglyphs. Some of the new drawings are only 37 meters in size, so they remained unnoticed with traditional research methods. Egypt and the swastika. The more I studied the archives about Ahnenerbe, the clearer it became. It was important for the Nazis not just to find ancient artifacts. They needed to place themselves into a grand past, to create a narrative where Aryans were not just a people, but the direct heirs of the most ancient civilizations. Egypt held a special place in this system, not because of the pyramids and mummies, but because of the symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the sun cross. For them, it was not just a sign, it was a code. The swastika really does appear in the cultures of India, Tibet, and China, and in Egypt, at least in the form of indirect symbolism. The movement of the sun, 4 directions, the cult of Ra. They found confirmation of their ideas in this. Sometimes it was far-fetched, sometimes quite convincing. Before the war, some researchers associated with Ahnenerbe were in Egypt, unofficially. They were interested in ancient books, burial rituals, ideas about the afterlife, and how the Egyptians connected power, magic, and order. The Nazis saw this as a system, not a religion, but a mechanism of control. as if the ancients knew something that was forgotten and they came to restore it. I looked at photographs from those expeditions. People in SS uniforms standing by temples, stone bas-reliefs decorated with runes. It wasn't just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own religion, a new one, not relying on symbols that project power. When Hitler spoke about returning to the past, he didn't mean Prussia. He looked further back into millennia, into civilizations that had disappeared but left a trace, and he wanted that trace to lead to them. The discovery rewrote the history of alcohol. The process of alcohol distillation goes back much further than previously thought. New excavations in the tomb of Liu He, the 9th emperor of the Western Han dynasty, showed that 2,000 years ago, people in China already knew how to produce distillate. Scientists found a bronze vessel called the celestial pot, which served as a key part of devices for distilling wine. Before this, historical texts indicated the appearance of such technologies only during the Yuan dynasty, that is, 1,000 years later. Liu He, despite his short reign, left behind an impressive legacy. In addition to the distiller itself, the oldest painting of Confucius was found in his tomb, as well as thousands of pieces of armor made of iron, copper, and lacquered leather. All of this testifies to the high level of craftsmanship during the Western Han period. An experiment with a replica of the bronze vessel showed a distillation efficiency of over 70% while preserving the taste and aroma of the drink. It was originally thought that this vessel could have been used for perfumes or medicine, but now it is clear its main purpose was the production of alcohol. The results of the study help us better understand the evolution of brewing and alcoholic products, complementing historical records and revealing the potential of early Chinese inventors.
Скульптура Атланта.
The impressive discovery in Chichen Itza enhances our understanding of the extensive cultural connections between the ancient civilizations of Mexico. The discovered Atlantean figure likely played an important role in religious or cultural ceremonies, and its detailed carving speaks to the high level of skill of ancient craftsmen. The fact that the figure was found during construction in a modern area is a reminder of how deeply the roots of history lie buried, even beneath places that seemed long forgotten or lost. The Atlantean figure from Chichen Itza will stand as another testament to the rich, diverse history of ancient Mexican civilizations. In Salnitsa, Bulgaria, archaeologists have discovered ritual artifacts more than 6,000 years old, including a bull-shaped vessel. The excavations took place in the prehistoric settlement of Salnitsa, located near Provadia. This site was an important center for salt production, a valuable resource of that time. The first inhabitants extracted brine from salt springs, evaporating it in ceramic jars placed in pits. Over time, they developed special furnaces that allowed them to process up to 30 kilograms of salt at a time, which significantly increased the scale of production. However, a series of earthquakes undermined the settlement's economy and defenses, which led to its decline. The discovery of a ritual pit with sacrifices offers new insight into the inhabitants' spirituality and practices. Among the artifacts was a zoomorphic vessel in the shape of a bull, symbolizing strength and fertility, as well as a ceramic vessel with geometric patterns and miniature figurines. Remains of ancient dwellings of the Everkiski house were found, which adds to the historical context of Salnitsa. I deliberately won't dwell on the details of the experiments. They're publicly available and they're worse than any horror story. But to understand who we are dealing with, we need to at least take a quick look there. Behind the doors of the camp laboratories, Dr. Sigmund Rascher, one of those who officially worked for the SS and conducted experiments on people in a pressure chamber, literally. Prisoners were placed in a sealed capsule to simulate conditions at an altitude of 20,000 meters, without oxygen, without protection. They observed how long a person survived, how the heart beat, and when it stopped. Those who survived the pressure chamber were then subjected to freezing. They were immersed in icy water, their body temperature was monitored, and their brain reactions were tracked. Then they tried to revive them. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Everything was documented. And this wasn't cruelty for the sake of cruelty, it was calculated. They were interested in the limit. Where does the body end? Where does the spirit begin? How can pain be used as a tool? There is a theory that the Nazis were looking for a way to rewrite the boundaries of the human mind, to create a soldier who could withstand extreme conditions, or, on the contrary, to turn a person into something else, controlled, reprogrammed. And there was also the Die Glock project, the bell, a device shrouded in secrets, rumors, and speculation. It was created deep in Silesia. Inside, there was supposedly a heavy liquid with the code name Zerum 525. Its purpose is still unknown. Some say anti-gravity, others say time experiments. But the main thing is, they worked on it seriously, underground, in secret, until the very end. And the more I read about it, the more I keep asking the same question. Did they really believe they could go beyond what it means to be human? Or were they just desperately trying to escape from what was inside them? The mythical gold mine. In 1929, Australia got its own Indiana Jones, Lewis Harold Bell Lassiter. He claimed that 3 decades earlier, he had discovered a massive gold reef in the very heart of the continent. There was almost no evidence, but rumors of a lost Klondike stirred up prospectors and historians. In 1930, Lassiter managed to organize an expedition, and once again, he set off into the outback. He was accompanied by a pilot, 2 gold prospectors, Aboriginal guides, and even a representative of the governor. However, Lassiter behaved sullenly. He got confused in his stories and was reluctant to show the way. Upon reaching Mount Marjorie, he claimed they were lost. His companions considered him an imposter and left. Lassiter was left only with a hunter, but soon the hunter abandoned him as well. In the end, Harold continued on alone. A year later, he was found dead in a cave. Judging by his diary, he died of exhaustion, having spent his last months among Aboriginal people trying to survive. Meanwhile, the legend of the reef did not fade. Numerous seekers combed the McDonnell Range in hopes of finding gold. The press discussed the mysterious Swede, Olaf Johansson, who supposedly also knew the way to the treasure. Later, books and films appeared. Director Luke Walker, in the Lassiter's Bones Project, found Harold's letters mentioning that very Olaf and hinting at the lost reef. Modern research has not confirmed large deposits in the designated area, although geologist Bill DeCarly came across a quartz seam that resembled Lassiter's description. He believed that Harold was merely retelling other people's stories. Nevertheless, the mystery of the treasure continues to excite the minds of romantics and gold hunters. Ritual Table in Tava-Tepe in Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tava-Tepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a long, rounded building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1,500 and 750 BC, nomadic peoples probably used Tava-Tepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists also found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen, a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints have been preserved, which may have served as food ration tokens. At the entrance, there were originally wooden columns, and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Outside, animal bones and discarded ceramic vessels were found, human figurines placed in sacrificial pits, and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the vessels indicate its ceremonial nature.
Предательство, которое стоило жизни.
The story of Anne Frank has always been a symbol of innocence destroyed for me, but recently I learned details that made this story even more terrifying. It was always thought Anne and her family were betrayed by accident. One of the neighbors, a denunciation, a coincidence, but recent research suggests otherwise. In 2022, a group of historians concluded that most likely Anne Frank's hiding place was given away by a Jewish notary, Arnold van den Berg, a man who tried to save his own family by giving the Nazis the addresses of other hiding places. When I learned about this, my first feeling was shock. But then I realized this is not just the tragedy of a single family. This is a reflection of the entire reality created by the Reich. A reality where fear is stronger than memory, where survival becomes betrayal, where even those who were supposed to be together end up on opposite sides. Anne Frank died in the Bergen-Belsen camp in February 1992. Just a few weeks before the end of the war, Her diary outlived her and became one of the most honest documents of that time. Because Anna wrote about simple things, dreams, grievances, hopes, about a life that was stolen from her by those who tried to build a world without mercy. I visited this camp last year. Almost nothing remains, just the foundations of the prisoners' barracks. Everything else is gone. After the camp was liberated, the British troops burned it to the ground. No buildings, no barracks, no photographs, only empty space. Perhaps this was done intentionally to erase the horror from the face of the earth, or so that no one could ever fully understand. And only the pines around, tall and somber, remember. They were planted back when all of this was happening. I'm not trying to piece together one definitive version. Everything we've discussed isn't a theory, but traces, fragments, what remained on the surface, even though it should have disappeared. The Nazis were searching for more than just a weapon. They wanted power that would look like a continuation of something ancient, almost eternal. What they created went beyond the war, in symbols, artifacts, technologies. They tried to rewrite reality itself. I don't know what part of it was a game, what was conviction and what was fear, but I know one thing. All of this can't just be forgotten, because too much of it seems to be coming back again, just under different names. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.